Welcome to the Equipcast for the Archdiocese of Omaha. Designed to help leaders to transform their cultures, to embody the pastoral vision, to be one church, encountering Jesus, equipping disciples, and living mercy. If you're watching this video right now, you've caught the live and unedited version of a podcast, which we call the Equipcast from the Archdiocese of Omaha. And this is Equipcast number 17. And today we're going to be talking about Catholic schools and Catholic education in the modern world, and maybe a little bit about tuition as well. I'm Father Jeff Lorig. I'm joined by my co-host, Jim Jansen, Director of the Evangelization and Catechesis Office. Hey, everybody. Hey, Jim. And also, I'm joined by our superintendent, our departing superintendent, Dr. Michael Ashton. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Honored to be here. Thank you.
I know you've just been dying to talk, right? You are often a great guest in the chat room and offering little tidbits here and there. So finally, we're going to turn your mic on and let you talk. So thanks.
Well, you have to assume that risk, yes. Yeah. Hope you've all signed your waivers.
It's good to have you here today. If you're live with us today, we want to encourage you to use the chat room as much as possible, ask questions, make comments, meet some new people. This is somewhat of a different crowd than what we're used to having. We have lots of school people here today, so this is fun to have kind of a new audience. We love it when you ask a question. It's not just fun, but it actually will influence our conversation. And we're going to really push Whitney Bradley from our Family Life Office. She helps produce this little thing that we call the Equipcast, but we're going to really push her to chime in if there's a really good question and interrupt our conversation, and so that we can make sure that gets addressed. So she's pretty good at seeing patterns and seeing some themes in the chat room. So please know that those are being read, and they will influence certainly how we move forward. If you don't stop us, Mike and I will just talk for a long time and go down rabbit holes. So again, we want to say thank you to Whitney, who does a lot of the behind the scenes work for us. This is actually going to be our last live Equipcast. We do kind of a Zoom webinar with folks, but really we're making a podcast. So we'll continue the conversations on the podcast. So you can go ahead and subscribe to a podcast if you're used to doing that, or maybe you're not. But if you have a smartphone, you have easy access to podcasts. So just search Equipcast, which is just one word, on your preferred podcasting platform. Or you can just subscribe to the blog that we run here called equip.archomaha.org. Never miss an update. By subscribing to to this blog, you'll receive an email and get all the goods. It's also where you'll find the show notes for this show and all future shows. And if I think we probably will have some live ones every once in a while, but just not weekly. It's kind of it's a lot of pressure to put these things on every week, and we don't want you to think this is all we do all week long. So, but I think there is some value of getting together through this digital way. So there won't be a live one next week. But if there are updates or if there are new ones, you can go ahead and subscribe to our blog at equip.archomaha.org. and find all the good stuff there. Arch Omaha here, Archdiocese of Omaha, our little pastoral services offices, which is the one I'm the director of here. We're running a subscribe to win contest. We want to give something away. We also want to increase the number of subscribers we have to our Equip blog. So at Equip, we believe in empowering clergy and lay leaders to transform the culture of their parishes and schools. And so we're offering a 1-year free pass to the GLS Next Premium. So what is GLS? GLS is the Global Leadership Summit, and the premium subscription that we want to give to you is an archive of all the awesome talks they've ever given at this Global Leadership Summit. And Global Leadership Summit is a leadership summit. It's really a Christian church that puts it on out of Chicago, and it's broadcast all over the world. We hosted it here in Omaha last year at Creighton University. We had 300 people from the Archdiocese of Omaha. We were one of the first, we are the first Catholic archdiocese to really host it. And in fact, the president of this whole leadership thing, I just got an email or just was in an email mix with them today, because they're really interested in what we're doing here as far as getting Catholics involved in leadership growth in the Christian world, to have more kingdom impact, as an evangelical might say. So the Global Leadership Summit is just a fantastic resource for teams and individuals who want to grow in leadership and hear inspiring talks. I know Father Cook from Christ the King is not shy about saying it impacted him in a big way last year, and it just really helped confirm him and affirm him in his own leadership as a pastor. So we're going to give this thing away. So if you are subscribed to this live Zoom, you're already entered to win. If you are a subscriber to the Equip blog, you are already entered to win. And so if you want to increase your chances that maybe your school or your parish could have access to this, get more of your teachers.
Create fake registrations.
That, or just submit just send a list to Dr. Ashton, and we'll put them in the MailChimp. But it is the value, like, so I paid for this myself when I first got into this. It's a $125 value. And so it's we have one that we want to give away. So if you want access to that and increase your chances, ask your teachers and others to go ahead and sign up for that. Sign up for the equip.archomaha.org website blog. There's a subscribe button up on the top right there on our site. All right, without much further ado, I think we should go ahead and get started. And I should also say that contest ends July 3rd. So we're going to announce on July 3rd who the winner is for this free content. So you have a little bit of time ahead of you. So now I think we can get started. And I have been working with Dr. Ashton for 3 years now, and both of us are going to be leaving our jobs here in just a couple weeks. But we've had some impassioned conversations about the value of Catholic education in our Catholic world here in Omaha. And of course, we know that Catholic schools are a huge part of who we are as a church here in Northeast Nebraska. And it just happened to be that we were talking about school tuition and the role of school tuition in our parishes and schools, and some of those conversations that happen. And so that's kind of how it started. But the conversation about tuition begs a lot of other questions. And I'm hoping really this conversation kind of lead into a lot of those things, because it's hard to talk about tuition without talking about the purpose of Catholic education anyway. So we hope we're not just talking for talking's sake either. Like, I'm so glad there's so many people here listening, and I know we're going to have a lot of people listening on the podcast because Catholic schools are a big part of our lives here. And so I think we do get an audience for it. And it's really important that we not just sit here and talk about it, but we do have some wins in mind. So Mike, what are some wins? Like, we've talked about this, but like, what are you hoping to accomplish from this conversation that we're going to have?
It's a launching point to have different conversations about tuition, because our current conversation on tuition is very tilted toward kind of an admission model and an irritation and something that doesn't really incorporate stewardship and our sacrificial nature as Catholics. We'd love to have more generative conversations where tuition really is a part of our stewardship conversation, not an admission or a pay for play type of conversation.
So you're hoping, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, you go ahead. No, you go first.
I'll jump in. So another win would, let's hope that maybe this will spark some conversations with us between each other to challenge each other on these questions about the value of schools, how tuition relates to that, the intersection between the intensity of the resources and the real result in terms of our church and growing our faith. And certainly, if we can get parishes and schools to bring a group together and bring a collaborative team together to really excite a new vision, and we have some schools and parishes that really have generated a new vision and conversation around tuition that is more aligned to our vision and priorities for the Archdiocese.
And what would be like the ultimate vision for ultimate win for you?
Ultimate vision is resources should not even be a question. That every child is able to have a choice. The families can choose a Catholic education without resources, tuition, money being a part of that decision making.
That's great. It's very idealistic, but
a little bit.
but that's why you have this job, and that's why we love you. And I think my wins for our conversation today, yeah, that first of all, that it clarifies the role of Catholic education in the church today. What can it accomplish? What are some unrealized potential? But that when that all kind of fits together. So when we talk about tuition, when we talk about enrollment, when we talk about parish resources, it's always done in light of the ultimate mission, which is, well, we can talk about that, right? So I think it's
Right.
to reach more people for the kingdom, right? For Jesus.
Right.
And so I'm really hoping that this will turn into a conversation back in parishes and find ways that schools really align with the overall vision and mission of the parish. So
Yes.
at the heart of these questions about tuition, which is sort of boring, is what it signifies, which is that it's more than exchange of money for services.
Right.
That's how it's kind of treated. We give you education, you give us some money, but it does quickly enter into questions about the real mission of Catholic schools. So, Mike, you have an ideal.
I do.
Yeah, and but from my experience as a former and future pastor, not everyone is on board with what you're saying and the idealistic kind of version of Catholic education. I think a lot of people would just like to raise tuition, and if you can pay it, then you can come. If you can't, we don't want to have to deal with you. So my experience as a Catholic educator, and I see the value of Catholic education, but I also know the headaches. So like when it comes to tuition, parents lie to you. I hate that. And I hate having that conversation. And I hate even considering that I might have to turn a child away because the tuition is not being paid by parents. When it comes to finances, it takes the bulk of a parish budget to run a school. When it comes to parents, there's lots of complaints about teachers and programs and curriculum. And it really enters into the kind of like the daily anxieties of a pastor. Like, why are we in the education business? Like, how does this fit in? And so I just know it's a big part of kind of the anxieties and struggles of a pastor to lead. And finally, just when it comes to making disciples, Jesus' great commission, make disciples, we don't often see it happening. And we don't often see those parents and their families in our church pews on Sunday. So the big question is, when it comes, again, it all starts with tuition, or like the seed question is about tuition, but it leads into these bigger questions. And the big question is, when it comes to these things, is it worth the cost of staying in the education business, Mike?
Right. So when we say cost, we have to remember that cost is truly just for salaries. For the most part, you're basically hiring an enormous group of very specialized experts. And when we say that's what are we paying for, that's literally where the money goes. The money goes towards salaries so people can dedicate a career and a job to doing this ministry, and likewise be able to pay for food at their family and a car and a house. So that's where the money goes. And when we use the conversation of supporting a school, we have to remember it's not an institution that needs propping up with dollars and cents. It's a group of people, and very good people, ministers, people that share the mission. And that's been the wisdom of our Archbishop when I look at his efforts to bring in School of Faith and really draw a bullseye around, let's help our teachers be the most impactful ministers they can be. Because ultimately, that's where your money goes, to have them be gainfully employed in a ministry of the church. And I think about our concerns where you have a church that's, when we say tasked with this huge bill, this large amount of money, and they can't even replace the roof. That speaks to a very large question about stewardship in general. That church has issues with raising money for the roof as much as they do for the school. That church may have stewardship issues. Maybe they just don't have the resources in their community to truly pay salaries to keep a school going. And many communities have had to make that hard decision. But hopefully we think of our unity as a church, and we consider the support of that big apostolate being an activity of the entire Christ body, not just people that are inside the school community with children. That it's a value to the church and the growth of God's kingdom to have people in a faithful environment when they're learning school versus a school environment that may not really participate in any faith activities or shine a light on Christ, or a place where people can encounter him. So ultimately, the value has to be determined in alignment with the mission, the vision and mission of our archdiocese. And when that's there, and you have a unified vision of all of us collectively supporting that output of our schools, that's all great. So here's where it goes wrong.
So it would be right to say that when you hire your teachers, you're really hiring ministers, and so
Yes.
that might be something to really think about when you're hiring and firing. We also know that there's a huge shortage of teachers right now, and
Yes.
So easier said than done. Oh, we're just going to hire missionaries, and well, there's not even that that many missionaries, let alone teachers, missionaries. So, but I think it would be good to think about that as if you were an administrator of a school, to think about I really want to. Maybe if somebody's not like a minister yet, but they have the heart for it and they could be developed. And I want to make sure that I onboard them in a way that sets that expectation that we're not just here. You're not just an employee. You're not just part of a corporation. We're here to transform the world through education of children.
Yes. And there are tremendous secular demands on the preparation of our educators. It's hard to envision, how will we fit that in? How will we add on the essence of what it means to be a Catholic school educator? And our institutions are doing better at that. And I think our archdiocese is doing a better job of that. And that's when we have that focus of, we don't want to just prepare these teachers to be good math teachers, to be good supervisors of children, to help counsel children or give them guidance to college. We want them to be fully formed adults that are also modeling Christ to these children and families, and thriving in their own religion, their own faith, their own spiritual lives.
So Jim Jansen, you're a parent of some Catholic kids, Catholic school kids. Six of them. You're doing your part. What do you think? You're also the director of evangelization. So you see the role of evangelization in schools. You see that connection. What do you think are some of our greatest opportunities, or maybe our most unrealized potential in Catholic education?
It's interesting that you bring that up. I think oftentimes, because I father as a parent sometimes, and a consumer, wrong word, right? But a beneficiary of the mission of Catholic schools. Sometimes I've had some frustration, and as I've reflected deeper on that, often my frustration really has nothing to do with the school. Meaning, what I feel I'm lacking is the fellowship of other parents. I'm blessed. My kids go to St. Bernadette Consortium School down in Bellevue, and gosh, I love our teachers. I think there's I'm biased because it's my kids' school, but I think they truly have missionary hearts as educators. But sometimes the challenge is the loneliness you feel as a parent if you're the only one holding the line on not letting your third grader get a smartphone. And really, when you look at some of those challenges don't really, it's not primarily the school's job to equip parents for the challenges of parenting teenagers and preteens. That's actually the parish's job. And so I think you guys hinted earlier, sometimes the integration between the mission of the parish and the school seems like there's a fracturing there, and that part of our way forward is healing that and helping to reintegrate those two missions.
Here we have priests and ministers that are experts at theology, at evangelization, at divinity, and all that expertise is right there in our parishes and here in our school buildings. And Megan asks a good provocative question in the chat. Here we have in our buildings teachers that have to be certified in XYZ, and they need these 9 credits and those 12 credits before they're even allowed in Nebraska to teach in a school. So we have to cross that hurdle. So we have to use the marriage of our gifts and the things that we have as strengths, bring it together and use that intersection to supercharge our parishes to be a place where not only is excellent civic education, things that benefit the civic and secular world, but the amazing formational opportunity that we have with children and their families, and having families engaged and drawn into that school community. That's where the power starts.
So Mike, I've got a question for you here.
Yes.
I'm going to throw it out. I'll throw out an assertion here, and we'll see if we can we can see if we can make the chat room go nuts. From talking with pastors around the archdiocese, if you ask them the question, So what percentage of your school families show up on Sunday?
Right.
Typical answer is somewhere around 30%. If you disagree with that, blow up the chat room. I mean, don't actually blow it up, but just like,
and I have a great follow-up question too.
Put your own number in there. My question is, like, as we look at, and I think I want to invite you probably to share a metaphor that you shared at the Archbishop's Dinner for Education about schools being a front porch. Like, how do we take that number, whatever it is, 30%, whatever, how do we take it and grow it? And how do we look at that, maybe not so much as a failure, although that's not an unfair statement from a certain perspective. How do we take that number, only 30% of our school families are coming to church, how do we turn that into an opportunity?
Right. It's an amazing opportunity because, first of all, when we measure how many of our school families are attending Mass, have we taken time to measure how many of our Omaha Metro or Archdiocesan families, 1.1 million people, how many of them are attending Mass? So if we're getting 30% of our school families,
same percentage.
Yeah, we're looking at, let's move the needle on both those numbers, because truly I'm more excited about why they're in Mass. Do we ever measure how many people are in Mass absolutely on fire for Christ and walk out of Mass still just broadcasting the light of Christ to their community, or how many of us are coming out of Mass and punching the ticket? Same with our schools. Academically, when we talk about what do we send out into the community from our graduations? Do we send children that are fully equipped and alive with good intentions and faithful hearts and a mind and soul for Christ? Or are they just walking out, punched their ticket, got their graduation diploma? So it becomes the same question.
How would you answer that question?
I would.
What are we producing?
If you are producing children that come out of your schools to bring Christ's kingdom to earth, that's the win. Regardless of where they're sitting or where they are on Sundays, they've got a heart and a mind for Jesus and a relationship with him, and they can be the charisma to others.
All right, I've got two questions.
I have a higher goal than just sitting in church. I'd love to see them at Mass, but I would also love to see them exuding Christ.
We don't just want them to be safe. We want them to be dangerous. Right? We want them to impact the world for Christ.
Yes. Okay, I got to interrupt here. So not interrupt, but this is great. But I think the chat room is being very, very helpful here.
Yes.
And practical, as good Nebraskans ought to be.
You bet.
One question is that Deb asked is, how do you make that transition? I'll just give you the example of, we have Megan drop on here. She leads the Christendom school, which uses the couple classrooms at St. Joan of Arc. So the model there is very different. Like, the teachers there are not certified. They don't have to go through all the training that a normal teacher would have to go through, but they're also like missionary teachers, or they're missionary students. They come from really good schools. They want to bring Jesus on earth. They want people to encounter Jesus. They're full of it, but they don't want to be like certified teachers. So they chose a model that says, like, let's just kind of go around the state and like do the way we think we ought to do school. So my strategic says that's a pretty good option. But we're not getting rid of our traditional parish schools anytime soon. So Mike, you and Vicki will have to sort of help guide us. How would we make our traditional parish schools a little bit more missionary, like maybe Christendom has kind of begin to experience?
I love the Christendom commitment, because you have a very different model there. To join in, you really have to commit. It's a whole family commitment. And if people would recruit and admit at that level of commitment, and when we introduce our parents to our school and bring in the children, we say, this is more than just an academic building. This is more than just Mass on Fridays and a couple service projects, and we put thumbs up to the C on Catholic. We make it a capital C. You are all in when you come in here, and you are in for the whole ride. In elementary, some of them are there for 10 years. We are co-raising your family with you. And our teachers and school leaders need to know. And this is where we come in as changing the conversation and actually bringing a different skill set. Our leaders and teachers need to know what spiritual and faith growth looks like. They need to understand how to interface with ministers, parishes, and families. And likewise, those families and parishes and ministers need to know how to interface with educators to say, how do we facilitate the ultimate goal together? What skills does that require? What knowledge and background does that require? And I look at our folks in School of Faith and now Evangelium Institute who are really looking for that answer. And I look at Jim's office who are seeking what type of backfilling do we have to do in our training and our experience as minister teachers to truly become ministers.
And I think, again, I have another question. Thank you for that. The other question is really is the question at hand that we started with, like tuition. And that's what Deacon Kelly from Columbus is asking. And the real question is not that whether we want our kid to have a Catholic education. I think most of us do. It is, how can we make this affordable to the family with multiple children? So it's kind of a specific question, but it's also a larger question about tuition and how do you fund this thing of Catholic schools that we're all saying is a value. So let's get into this then. So this is, I think it helps begin to answer some questions about the practicalities of. So okay, we say like schools have the potential to really change the world through making disciples and welcoming families and transforming families through an encounter with Jesus in the church. I think all of us on this would probably agree with that, I hope. And then the other question is that I always have is like, but is it worth the cost? Like it's cost so much, energy, resources, money, all that stuff. Then the question that leads us to is tuition. All right. So because then you get these really bad conversations where just like, you're thinking about like kicking a kid out and like, it's not the kid's fault, but the parent says they will pay and they never do. And they kind of lie to your face. And like, it's just, so Mike, what is tuition?
If we have aligned our mission in the schools with the mission of the church, we treat tuition the same way we treat the basket. This is a giving of ourselves to support the church on earth. So that conversation begins and ends with stewardship. Rather than where you're talking about a student gets kicked out, can't pay. If we can truly wrap around the conversation to be stewardship, support of the apostolate, support of the mission of the church, then it's not, hey, you over there, why aren't you paying? Because then we'd have to go through the pews and we'd have to point at each parishioner and say, hey, why didn't you put in the basket? Get out of here. You didn't put in the basket. Get out of here, right? That's not a conversation we would ever have. And if we're truly bought into the value and impact our schools will have on the church, then it's not a, you can't pay, get out of here. It's how can you help us collectively support this mission? So tuition grew out of, when you think about, you track it back, we packed our schools with religious, and there was a tuition. The tuition was what the money was collected in the church to support the food that the priests and nuns ate, the houses that the priests and nuns lived in, the cars that they had to drive, right? There was still a tuition. We just didn't call it tuition. It was what you gave to the church. And we had a combination of factors through the 70s and 80s where you had a lot of religious pulling out of the schools, just do the numbers. And you had a flood of students into the schools during the 60s. And then lay teachers who had a whole different expense profile. They had a whole different college education they had to pay for. They were supporting families, so now it became expensive. And then you layer on top of that public education, all education has become more expensive due to the use of technology, health insurance issues, and college costs. So all these things have this line of costs going very steeply, and our line of revenue from givings to the church very flat. So tuition was what that was used. Tuition was supposed to fill the gap. And it was, this is our fault as Catholic Church. Our fault of the Catholic Church was to say, your tuition pays for the school. And if you're going to that school, you have to pay more than everybody else. And as soon as that conversation started, you couldn't turn around. And that's where we're hung with this really malformed idea that I pay my dollar for that child's education. And all of our conversations kind of revolve around that model rather than the model of I'm paying you, the church, and I'm doing it under this tuition label. I'm paying you, the church, to keep this school open because it has value to Christ's body and it needs to sustain into the future.
It's not money for admission. It's
Right.
money for the mission.
Oh, man.
Huh? Should
I wish I thought of that.
I should be an evangelical pastor, I think.
Darn.
The tuition is not money for admission. The tuition is money for the mission.
For the mission.
And you're saying, ideally, again, you kind of live in ideals.
Yes.
That we wouldn't even have tuition. It would just all be part of our stewardship offering, the offering that we make for the whole mission of the church. We wouldn't have these distinctions like, oh, you have to pay more because you get this extra service.
Those models are out there. The Wichita model that's 30 years going, and they're out there. They show some successes, they show some challenges, but you do have some people that boldly still go through that model of collectively we're all tithing, collectively we're all supporting the church, and we all believe that this is a proper use of resources to man these buildings with all these students so that the children that leave there and the families that experience their lives there really are better for it.
So you're saying there are people who have done this.
Yes.
This isn't just an ideal. It's been made.
Right.
And it's not just, it's actually.
Well, it is how the church did it before. That's what he was saying. Is like, it is how we used to do it.
Yes.
And it's easy to kind of look down at Wichita and say, oh, everything's hunky-dory down there. What you know what's going on?
They have their challenges.
They're like, they have these guilt sessions and shame sessions. Hey, you haven't paid your stewardship. And then it all comes on the pastor to have these conversations. And it's just, it's not as ideal as you might think it. Yes. No kid ever has to pay for, well, I don't know how it all works, but like everybody has to pay, but not everybody pays for tuition. So everybody has a chance to go to the Catholic school there.
Yeah. So we do have models. For instance, ask Sister Dolores Hannon about Mercy High School. And I don't want to put any schools above another, but this is just one example that I've learned more from just in my conversations with Sister D, that everyone who comes to the door, it's a question to them of what type of sacrifice are you able to make to help support this environment, to help support this institution moving into the future. And every person that goes there, they call it a negotiated tuition, which doesn't surely fit into that ideal model, but it does open the door to say, the amount I support is more relevant to my means rather than a business calculation of cost and exchange. Because right now, most of our schools, it's a business calculation of transaction. It's not a sense of, well, what can you give? Now, when we turn to parishioners, we do have that conversation. Archbishop Daniel O'Peel and other stewardship activities, we say, give what you can. But then when we get to school, it's our fault. Catholic schools and Catholic church, it's our fault. We change the dial. We say, no, it's not stewardship. You got to pay your ticket. It's on this paper. We've done this math very carefully. And if you can't, we're sorry, we can't help you.
So have you had difficult conversations? You've never been the pastor, right? I think when you have to be the guy that has to pay bills, or guy or gal that has to pay the bills, so it's easy for you to see these things, but at the end of the day, the pastor has to pay the bills. Like, have you had the tough conversations?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, the job I had as principal, it's a bit more perilous because if I don't do a good job getting the budget in the black, they can fire me. Right?
It's hard for me to get fired.
Yeah, exactly. The priest doesn't have to get, but they can fire the pastor.
We just close it down.
Yeah. So I've had those conversations of the crying parent in front of me who is just so distressed over the tuition and they can't pay it and they drive away and they're escalating. That's an exact example. And so there's always that sense of, am I really getting the story? Is this an honest conversation? But in the Catholic Church, we lead with trust, transparency, and honesty. We're leading with the high moral ground, and we're going to have people that come to us saying, I can't, and I don't, and I won't, and who may lie to us? The guy on the corner that's asking me for $5 as I drive by, he could be lying to me. The poor man in the street that is saying that he's dying of hunger, he might be lying to me. But we've learned that's Christ. That's Christ in those people. And whatever their distress is, we can be servants and ministers to them to our own disadvantage. And sometimes we get stung. Sometimes we're wrong. We give money to someone who doesn't need money, or we forgive a tuition for someone who doesn't need tuition forgiven. But unless we're willing to go through the pews and say to every single person, I don't believe you're giving as much as you can. But morally, we challenge them. We do. Morally, we challenge people and say, this is a thoughtful and prayerful discernment exercise for you. What can you do to support our mission?
Any comments, Jim?
I just saw Deb True to give a shout out to the Children's Scholarship Fund, which helps with that, right? It makes a huge difference. Mike, tell a little, I mean, I think this audience knows, but for those who might not, talk a little bit about what the Children's Scholarship Fund is.
Sure. It was an effort that came out of New York City, brought to Omaha by the Andersons and a couple other families, and they were challenged to establish a very significant fund of money so that a student who wanted to attend a Catholic school, but their family did not have the resources and means to contribute anything, as long as they could bring and muster together a few $100s, then the Children's Scholarship Fund would provide it's a range of money depending on your financial need. But once you were pulled out of the lottery for that, then that tuition money followed you through your entire time in elementary school, in elementary Catholic.
And I think it's important. It's important to note, like, I don't want to make this sound like an advertisement for the Children's Scholarship. This is not the reason why this Equipcast is happening today.
We need the logo to pop up somewhere.
But I think what you're experiencing, some of the people are commenting in the chat room, like they're kind of getting it. Like if there's a mission, then we'll pay for it. Like we'll like Deacon Callie just saying, like, yeah, we should have some sort of sponsorship program. We should talk about, like, the mission is in front of us. Like, of course we will throw some money into it because it's totally worth it. So I think at the very beginning of this, at the heart of all this, if you're going to talk about tuition, you have to talk about your mission. If you're going to talk about fundraising, you have to talk about your mission. Like Shannon constantly talks about, if you're going to have some sort of fundraising dinner, you better talk about why you're raising funds, rather than doing sort of the silly song and dance auctions. And I'll do this for you, and so I'll give you this, and we'll get a little money on top of it. And it's like, no, if you cast the vision of why you're doing this, then people will usually pay. Because it's convincing. Like, I don't see any negative comments in here from anybody. Maybe they're just being nice to you, Mike. But
I think so.
I think
they figure I'm leaving.
Yeah. So here's your
chance.
chance.
Deleting those as soon as I get posted.
Parting shots, but I think you understand why we hired Mike, because when he does speak about it, you want to buy in. You want to, like, it's not practical always, but it's like, but he inspires you because of the idea and the ideal of the mission of educating children in the Christian world, because there's more at stake than ever.
Yes. And good. Nicely done, Father. That's awesome.
Mike, could you we talked about this. I love it, Father, right? It's like, it's the rediscovery of our sense of mission that helps, right? It ennobles, our sense of tuition beyond just like a simple exchange of goods and services. I think it also helps bring the parish and school together. Mike, we went here earlier, and I don't think we actually did it, but can you share your front porch metaphor, just about like how the intersection of the mission of the parish and school come together?
I get very, very excited about the school as an apostolate being the largest outreach and outward facing image of Christ to the larger community of the Archdiocese of Omaha. Now, much like a house has a porch on it, and you see people on that porch, you don't always see what's inside the house. A lot of people don't know what's inside the Catholic faith. They have no idea. In fact, common media fills them with all sorts of myths and non-truths about our Catholic faith. And our schools can be that entry point, that introduction to show this is a very friendly place. There's love here. There's safety here. There's great education here. There's the Jesuits have great basketball playing. All these things are here. So once they get onto the porch, that's when we can introduce them to say, well, why are we here? Why is this different than the school down the street? Why do we have the cross on the wall? Come on inside the house and learn a little bit about where this comes from. Why do we have love in our hearts? Why do we sacrifice to make this happen? And when they start understanding the deeper level, because truly, how many people are coming to our Catholic schools that aren't even Catholics? And sure, they might be coming to us just with the intention to say, and I'll be blunt, I'll say it, that I just want to play football for Scott Catholic. And that's the only reason I go to a Catholic school.
Not a bad
reason. We're going to have that. We're going to have that. And so what do we do with that family? Do we turn them away? No, this is the mission field. These are the souls that Christ wants us to touch. And bringing them to that front porch and bringing them into close proximity to faithful people, families that are on fire for Christ, teachers and administrators and school employees that are servants to the church. This is where it works. This is where it happens.
And ultimately, let's just keep going with the house analogy. So take them further into the house. From the porch to the living room, we're doing life together. But then where do you ultimately want people to be together? Sharing a meal at the table. Being in communion. Yeah. And so that is a Andy Stanley analogy. So I just want to make sure we give credit to Andy Stanley. But but that's an evangelical church down in Atlanta with a clear mission strategy of how they reach new people. They have a front porch. It's not a Catholic school, but they have a front porch, and then they lead them in, and eventually to break bread together. And it's an evangelization strategy as well. So
I love that. I think it works really well for us, especially when we talk about getting people to the table. But I think what I love about it is it flips that. We talk about like, oh my gosh, only 30% of our school families, are coming to Mass. It's like it flips that analogy, flips that from being, a failure to being an opportunity. And now we recognize, no small feat today with some of the press we've had for young families to trust us with their children. And now we have these families, millennial families. That's the question so many of our churches are struggling with. How do we engage millennials? It's like, you know what? They're sending you their kids. They trust you with their precious little ones. And we can take that bridge of trust as they find these teachers and other families that are loving them in school and help draw them deeper into the family and into the home.
Now let's stop, take a pause, because we have a pastor, a seasoned pastor, making a comment in the chat room. At Columkill, we promote, this is Father Reason, promote the Wichita model and keep tuition low. Yep. It's awesome. It's our goal, but we have a long way to go. We contribute $400 for each high school student in diocesan high schools, and I'm frustrated that some contribute nothing in Sunday tithes. Mike, answer that one.
Oh, that's a great question. So we have in our schools and churches families that are supporting the church. Family A goes to church every Sunday, very engaged in parish life. Family B goes to church on Sunday, very engaged in parish life, and has children in the school and is paying tuition. Consider the financial burden on that family that's paying tuition is more than the financial burden of the family that's going to church and enjoying a parish life. So the question becomes, why should that be different? Why should one carry the worse load than the other? So now advance that to high school. We have tuitions elementary here that are $4,000 to $5,000. You go to high school where there's not a hosting parish, there's not a parish that's subsidizing that school. Now your tuition is $9,000. So in a sense, that family that left your pew empty of money, it's because they're giving it to the school. And if the school truly is aligned, they're taking $4,000 of their annual income and putting it to the school. If the school really is aligned to the mission of the church, then that money's still going to the church. It's just not going through your parish to the church. But the question always is that high school aligned to the mission? Is that elementary aligned to the mission? Is this money actually doing the work that the church wants to be doing? And I would counter, if we took all that money and we instead just paid ministers, and instead of one teacher for every 20 children, what if we had one minister, paid employee of the church, for every 20 parishioners? Gosh, that would be like 700 employees at St. Stephen the Martyr. Am I doing the math right? That's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we'd start questioning, is the church really worth supporting? Are we making enough priests? Are enough of those people sitting in the pews? We'd have the same conversation because we see all that money go out the door. We want to see something happen with it. We do that with schools. We see all that money go out of the baskets. We see it go out of our pockets. We want to see something happen.
Yeah, and it keeps coming back to this question of, do we know who we are and what we're about? And
right. Are we measuring the right things?
Yeah, and do we know why we're in the business? You know, start with why. Simon Sinek has a great book called "Start with Why." Whitney will put that link in the show notes. I wish I wrote the book, but I didn't. So he just if we keep asking the question why, it's not for football, it's not for this, it's not for that. It is for something bigger. And if administrators and teachers and parents keep asking the question why, and I think that will help us. That'll lead us to somewhere where we want to be, where the Lord wants us to be. In Father Malin's book, Divine Renovation, in the first chapter, he just says the main crisis of the church is it's not the abuse scandal, it's not a priest shortage. The primary crisis in the church is an identity crisis.
Yes.
We've forgotten who we are. And
you know what I really appreciate about the Archdiocese, Father Lorig? We have
pay you.
I do. Thank you, by the way. We have 71 schools. We have 71 very valid, different whys possible in those 71 schools. Because there's a slightly different why if we're serving a school that's full of Spanish-speaking students that can't get a good education in their public school, but they're getting a good education in the consortium. Or the Sudanese refugees that feel excluded and rejected in their communities and are looking for that oneness, that solidarity, and a place of safety. Or in Winnebago, or in South Sioux City, or Crofton. Everybody has a slightly different why. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just sustaining a Catholic community because all the Catholics left in East and West Catholic, the towns are shrinking. So the schools become a rally point for Catholic culture in some of those places. So every school has an opportunity to have a really powerful why that still tracks directly to the mission and vision of our church.
You know, as I listen to you guys talk, right, it's my lens. I think about evangelization, but if the fundamental mission of the church is the making of disciples, it's our rediscovery of that, whether it's making disciples in the context of a parish or a school. I think about, Father Reeson's question. The title of the U.S. Bishop's document on stewardship is, stewardship, a disciple's response. And sometimes when stewardship isn't where we want to be, we actually have to ask our question. It's like, well, do we have disciples? I mean, when you have disciples, right, Jesus says, right, your treasure will be where your heart is also. And so all of this is rediscovering the core mission. When our parishes rediscover the core mission, we can invite a larger group besides just those who are benefiting from the school directly. It can really become an expression of the mission of the whole parish, right? When our schools are making disciples, they have a mission worth talking about and worth inviting people to participate. And when we're making disciples, we have people who, what's 10% of my annual pre-tax income for the Savior of my life?
I was just gonna share a quote from one of the documents from Vatican II. Actually, Mike pulled this out for our prep notes, but we haven't really had a chance to talk about it. But I think this is what you're talking about, Mike. Like it's more than just one mission. Like I might have my idea of like, I want to form disciples and I want everybody like, but there's also there can also be the function of a school to help the poor. So here's the quote from, it's called the Gravissimum Educationis. So it's just the document on education from Vatican II. It just says, this sacred council of the church earnestly entreats pastors and all the faithful to spare no sacrifice in helping Catholic school fulfill their function in a continually more perfect way, and especially in caring for the needs of those who are poor and the goods of this world, who are deprived of the assistance and affection of a family, or who are strangers to the gift of faith. And so I think that certainly nails it. And we have that happening here in the Archdiocese of Alma. We have it at Winnebago and some of the consortium schools and the Q schools. And I think we should be really, really proud that we didn't give up there, and proud of the people who had the will to keep those things going.
Yeah.
Let's do some
credit
call.
Credit those schools too that we all believe are wealthy, but also have many families that are struggling and that are lifted from poverty for their opportunity.
True. Yeah, exactly. Let's do some call to action here, Mike. Just some
call to action.
Final things that, like, we don't want to just have a conversation. Hopefully this is shaping all of us, rethinking about what Catholic education can be. Yes. Hopefully we might share this conversation with some of our team members.
Yes.
Always feel free to reach out to, Mike's not going to be here that long, but Vicki Kaufhold, our new superintendent.
Yes.
And we have several other people who are from the Catholic Schools office. I think everybody gets this, right? Everybody understands this concept. So it's not just like when Mike leaves, it's all going to go to pot.
Right. Well, we need to use a different language. We need to use different words. And sometimes it's very simple, is to get away from the admission philosophy, to get away from you can't come because you can't pay. And use these conversations, these jumping points to say, how can we support our church? How can we support each other in the support of our church? And then to bring people into these leadership teams of your parish. A lot of folks are forced to make these decisions by themselves. The pastor or the principal by him or herself, or the business manager is alone in these decisions. And they shouldn't be. These are decisions that affect people's families. They're hard and they're painful. And to bring a team of people together to really examine the issue and have generative conversations, that's a powerful tool in this.
So give us some calls to action. Challenge us. Tell us what to do.
I'm going to say you need to communicate with school families and parish families differently on the word tuition. When you're talking about what you're charging, what you're actually putting out as a price, the language you're using is, this is support, this is stewardship, this is a contribution, this is a collection, this is a collaborative effort to sustain a valuable apostolate that's done wonderful miracles for the church and will continue to do so. But in tandem with that conversation, constantly ask the question, is it a great apostolate? Is it focused? Or are we just putting a cross on a school for a good education?
All right. And I'll just, again, Deacon Kelly from Columbus, he's getting quoted a lot today. Thanks. I think we know who's going to host this next year. You got a new job, Deacon Kelly. His final comment here is just, the other thing is, we can't just be good podcast attendees and say we all feel good now. I spend an hour on a podcast. We have to take what we learn and go out and get our pastors and our principals and to share what we learn and make a difference in a cause that matters, like our children's education. And we can make a difference. You have influence, and just run if you're a good leader. Everybody here is a leader because you have influence, and who can you influence? Who can you talk to? Just want to keep encouraging everybody in all of that. And we also have a responsibility as Christians to be good stewards of our influence as well.
Amen.
Michael?
And I offer from the Catholic Schools office that we will give you those questions to provoke conversations. We'll provide you with example models. Like I have the Mercy model right in front of me of the negotiated tuition, just to ask questions and look at a comparator. We can give suggestions of who needs to be in that team, that decision-making or conversation team that's re-examining your model of tuition. So tap us, we'll be glad to help.
Michael, thank you very much. Jim, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Next week, we will not be here. There will not be a live Zoom, but if you want to get some updates, and when we do a podcast, that will all be on equip.archomaha.org. Subscribe to that. Get your friends, your family, your pastors to subscribe to that, and we can continue these conversations moving forward. God bless everybody, and take care. Happy summer.